أوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, so who can remind us about this? Cooperate with one another in goodness, righteousness, and do not cooperate in sin and transgression. This comes up a lot in fiqh. Who can remind us about this? We did this last week, I believe. Selling somebody something that they might do something haram with. What else? There's a common one, contracts. Assisting others in sin. Who can explain this? Somebody who creates websites, do software, and then companies use this software for different things. The concept of nobody. Zaid, Ma'ab. Okay, I'm going to give you a 2-minute exercise then. So ask Sheikh Google, put directly and indirectly assisting in sin, and fatwa, or put seekers guidance. Um, I don't know. Ask Imam, direct and indirect assistance in sin. Okay, and tell me what you find. Indirect assistance in sin is not sinful. What does that mean? Indirect assistance in sin. What's an example of that? We are not accountable for sins of others except for the extent of our facilitation or involvement therein, and Allah knows best. Okay, so Hafsa has a friend. Okay, Hafsa's friend wants to get married, and so Hafsa introduces her friend to some guy. They end up having a haram relationship. Are you responsible for that? So introduce them in view of the fact that they were going to meet and talk about marriage, but they ended up just continuing in a haram relationship. Are you responsible for that? You're not responsible for that. Okay? But you share a link to somebody, right? So someone's doing something haram, they drink, and then they buy drinks for somebody else. Is that halal or is that haram? Right? Selling alcohol, right? So just as it is haram to sin, it is haram to facilitate sin. Okay? Was example of the knife. Giving someone a knife and them using to hurt somebody. So is it haram to sell knives? No, it's not, right? Is it haram to sell arms in general? Right? You have an arms company and you sell arms, you just sell it to countries in general, right? But if you know that this country is going to be using it for sin, that's something else. You provide internet services, you provide phone services. Oh, but people might use it for the haram. Yeah, I know, but that's not, you know, I didn't facilitate that, right? So here's a tricky situation you can be in, right? Is your neighbor says, "Hey, Sister Fahmi, are you going to this? Are you going shopping?" Say, "Yeah." Could you just get me some things on this list? Like, sure. So she go. They want to buy some beer. They want to buy some pork, and like, I'm sorry, I cannot help you do the haram. Right? You can't do that. Okay, you cannot help somebody do the haram. I'm not gonna stop you. You are gonna go and buy your alcohol, buy your pork, buy whatever. I'm not gonna help you do that, right? And then there's some things are in between and how we judge it. So there's certain things that are like, let's say for example, doing Uber Eats, right? So I do Uber, and when's the best time to do Uber? And what are the best places? Exactly when people are drunk, right? So Saturday night is going to be, right? That's going to be the times. So I'm an Uber driver. It's like, like a serious conversation you have with somebody who's an driver. It's like, if I don't do Saturday nights, I'm going to lose like a lot of money, a lot of money. So you can make good money, let's say 3 a.m., people going to the airport, the school run sometimes, but it's like, that's a lot of money you can make on a Friday, Saturday night, right? And so where do you want to be, right? So in reality, there is a bit of debate. Because when you say don't facilitate sins, like, okay, I was dropping you off at the nightclub. Maybe you clean the toilets in the nightclub. I don't know what you do there, right? But you pick up people who look like they're dressed up to go to a nightclub, and you take them to a nightclub, right? Or you pick up a man and a woman from a nightclub and you take them back to their house, right? Inshallah, they're married, right? But you know what I'm saying? So there's people who do that kind of stuff. It's kind of obvious what's going on. Just as a kind of, a hard, like a line of fiqh, like, is it technically 100% haram? It is not technically 100% haram, according to all scholars. Some scholars will say, well, you didn't like directly facilitate the sin. You kind of, you took them to that point, but you didn't like literally pour the drinks for them, right? Furthermore, some scholars argue that non-Muslims are not obliged to follow the Sharia, right? So you have an issue in the Hanafi school. If you have an issue in the Hanafi school where I am employed by a Christian, and a Christian under Sharia law is allowed to drink alcohol, and I'm delivering alcohol to a Christian, and that Christian is allowed to drink alcohol under Sharia law. So how am I facilitating the haram? So I am working for a Christian, serving alcohol to a Christian as a Muslim, right? So under Sharia law, they're allowed to drink alcohol. So what's the issue? The majority of scholars would say, no, that's not, you cannot do that because it is haram for them to drink alcohol. The fact that the Sharia allows them, I mean, the court allows them or the police allow them is something else. They are morally forbidden and you are helping them go to hell. The Hanafis say that's not true. The Hanafis say that a non-Muslim is not obliged to abide by the Sharia. So there is much more leeway in the Hanafi school in terms of doing things like taking somebody to a nightclub, picking people up from a nightclub, um, working in a supermarket, for example. Like, what did I pour alcohol down your neck? I just work in a supermarket. I stack shelves. I can't tell my manager, hey, I don't want to stack this. I can't do that. It's the job is there's a flexibility in that job. They can't just make that exception for me. And I have not had a job for the last 6 months, right? So, you know, there's degrees. So don't judge other people, but ideally we avoid all of these things, right? I don't want to do Uber Eats. I don't want to be dropping off food that's haram to people's houses. I don't want to do, these kind of things. Um, it's pretty. If you know people who've done this stuff, it's pretty crazy what kind of things they see. It's very disturbing. You don't want to be in that environment. But there's people who don't have a job, right? So the Fahmiya, you in the UK right now, right? right? Is it true that the economy is going downhill, right? So a doctor in the UK contacted me recently. He's like, oh, he's asking me this question. I said, it's better, it's better to avoid this. And he's like, listen, this is the situation I'm in right now. Like he's a doctor, let alone somebody else. So don't judge other people, and you try and avoid these things as much as possible, right? But there are some leeway in some of these things, and you try your best to find the most halal job you can do, right? The most halal job you can do. But some situations be like, yeah, what do I do? I'm stacking shelves in a supermarket. I'm the only thing I can do, like the only job I can do is I can't do Uber for this reason, but I can do Uber Eats, and I can't keep choosing it. It's not I can't just deliver halal food. It's not possible, right? So it's tough. Security guard, yeah, you might be dropping off a security guard at a night, right? But is that haram? For example, what is my job? I'm at a nightclub, and my job is to stop people fighting. Like, is that haram? You know, that's not. Or I'm an electrician, and it's like the company has sent me to this place. It's like, you know. So I don't want to, like, I prefer that electricity does not work in that place, right? I don't want to be in this place, but this is my job, right? And so there's certain limits when you're directly facilitating a haram, like 100%, there's something else, right? But indirectly, and what does indirectly exactly mean? There is some room there, but in general, that anything that's directly facilitates the haram is haram, right? And so we have to be very, very careful, and so, example, is it obligatory to boycott? It's not obligatory. Why? Because when you buy that product, you're not directly causing the haram, are you? You're indirectly causing the haram. But, boycotting is effective, right? What would you do if your family was there? What would you do if? But so, there's gray areas, right? And we are trying to avoid those gray areas as much as humanly possible, right? But there are situations where it's very, very difficult, particularly when people do not have a job. There is no other work you could do, you know. Allahu Alam. And it's very easy, subhanAllah, it's very, very easy to talk about these things when you're not in that situation. Like, no, I wouldn't do it even if. Okay, sure. Right. You're now 10,000 in debt and you're about to be kicked out of your apartment and, right? It's a very different picture. So don't judge people until you're in that situation. Right? Allah protect us. Okay, so that's the issue. And then it says, forbidden for you, rather, the only thing that's forbidden for you is carrion. What is carrion? What is carrion is not blood, no. A corpse, okay. Dead meat, roadkill, dead animal that has not been slaughtered, right? This is called carrion, right? So, what vultures eat, that's called carrion, okay? So an animal that has not been slaughtered. So if it has been slaughtered, then it is going to be halal. Blood, can we eat blood? So what about fish blood? Okay, what about your own blood? Like you just bit the inside of your mouth and you can taste blood. What do you do? That's fine, you can just eat it. So if you bit the inside of your mouth, what would you do? Spit it out and then rinse your mouth. Okay. So, okay, what if it's happening all the time? I remember when I took my first two t wisdom teeth out, it bled for a week. I remember I was talking to the scholar and I was like, when I would move around a lot, it would start bleeding again. It was pretty bad, right? So you try your best in a situation where it's literally bleeding, you have a problem with bleeding gums, you have a problem with something else, right? But a normal situation, you just bit your lip right now and you can taste the blood. Go and spit out the food that's in your mouth because you have najasa, right? Blood is like urine. It's like having urine in your mouth, right? So you go and spit it out, rinse, gargle, and then move on, right? But if it's something that's recurrent, that's something else. Okay, and swine, what does swine mean? Pig. Okay, so that means you can eat anything else. As long as it's not blood, as long as it's not pig, and as long as it's slaughtered, then you could eat it. Is that correct? Okay, so what else can you not eat? Carnivores. Okay. You cannot eat carnivores. So you couldn't eat a wolf, you couldn't eat a bear. Okay. Now that's the majority opinion, right? The majority opinion. The position of the Malikis is forbidden for you is carrion, blood, and swine, right? So many of these things that the majority of scholars would label as haram, they label as makruh. So in the Maliki school, you could actually slaughter a bear, you could slaughter a wolf, right? They have a debate in the Maliki school, could you eat a dog, right? Could you eat a dog or not, right? So the Malikis do not hold that the dog is najis. And the verse says, forbidden for you is the carrion, blood, and swine, right? And so um, that it's actually makruh to eat a dog, not haram. I don't know what the relied upon position is in the Maliki school, but that's a position that exists. So there's many things in the Maliki school that are makruh and not halal to eat, right? And so when they talk about the purity of animal feces, they will say that edible animal, the feces and urine of edible animals, is the Malikis, is pure. But so that when they say edible, they mean neither makruh nor haram, right? It is true, yeah. So I believe the majority opinion. So hadith, I think, is in Sahih Muslim that Sayyidina Jabir was asked, can you hunt and eat hyena? And he says, yes. And he said, did the Prophet ﷺ say that? He said, yes, right? And so more importantly than that, or more obvious than that, is that many of the Sahaba, they gave a fatwa regarding somebody who hunts and kills a hyena while on Hajj. So what is forbidden on Hajj is hunting land prey. So the fact that some of these Sahaba gave a fatwa that the expiation was to slaughter a ram, that they viewed it as like somebody hunting like a gazelle or something like that, right? The ancient Egyptians, they have these pictures of the ancient Egyptians fattening up hyenas for eating. Yeah, so people used to eat hyenas. Um, so there we go. And the Shafis can also eat foxes. Yeah. So, but generally speaking, birds of prey, uh, carnivores, right? Okay, what about a chicken? Is a chicken a carnivore? Is it a carnivore? It's like it only eats. It's a bird. It's a bird of prey. It's an omnivore. Thank you. Right. So there's an issue that some of the Salaf they debated this issue. The cannibals, yeah, they eat themselves. They would, right? They would definitely eat themselves. No question. Right. Um, so chickens, right? They'll eat. I can remember seeing my own chickens eating a dead mouse. That was pretty disgusting. They love chicken meat. They'll eat chicken meat. They'll eat beef, pork, anything, worms. Uh, you know. So a pure starch diet is not a real diet for a chicken, and that's not the kind of diet that's supposed to be on. Um, Even rabbits will eat their young, right? A baby rabbit will eat its young if it's starving, if it's hungry, like if it knows that it's not going to work out, they'll eat its young. So imagine if a rabbit ate its young and then you ate the rabbit, right? A bit disgusting, but. So, what about a shark? A pig fell in the river, in the sea, and the shark ate the pig, and then you ate the shark. Is that okay? You can, right? So, when you say carnivores, meaning animals that have fangs, that's usually the general opinion of most scholars, right? With a few exceptions here and there. Okay. Anything of the fish, right? The fish does not need to be slaughtered, right? You can eat shark, you can eat or whatever, anything, any fish you can eat, right? The Hanafis, they say an octopus, squid, crab, these are not fish, right? So you can't eat those things, right? The majority of scholars say anything that is purely aquatic is fine. If it's purely aquatic, it doesn't matter how it's killed, you can eat it. Octopus, squid, stingray, shark, a dolphin, whale, it doesn't matter what you do with it, right? It's all halal. Okay. We mentioned about blood then. What happens then if you have, can you eat raw meat? What do we say about raw meat? Can you eat raw meat? Hmm. So what if it's dripping with blood? Okay, so how am I going to get the blood out then? For how long? How many days should I drain it for? Exactly, try your best, right? So practically speaking, you say blood is there. Well, you can't get rid of the blood, can you? Right? Like meat is like a sponge. Like how are you going to get rid of everything inside it? It's not going to happen, right? So it's not going to happen. So you try your best and that's it, right? And the rest is overlooked. Okay, anything else to talk about here? Carrion, blood, swine. We'll talk about some other things in a second. Now, it doesn't say swine. It says, the verse says, the only thing forbidden for you is carrion, blood, and the meat of pig. So what about pig skin? Is pig skin, what's it called? Pork rind. Is that haram? What about pig fat? What about pig hairs, boar hairs, right? So here, the majority opinion is that a pig and everything to do with the pig is filthy, right? Everything, right? Now, well, as we mentioned last week, Ibn Hazm, who's this huge, huge scholar, like he's not a lightweight, he's a huge scholar, okay? He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said only, okay? It mentions this, and then he says the meat of pigs, that excludes the skin, that excludes the hair, that excludes the hooves, that excludes the fat, the eyeballs, the brain, right? That's not meat, is it? Or maybe the brain is, I don't know if you count that meat or not. So is that in principle, is he like a kafir for saying that? Like did he reject the Quran for saying that? Like is he 100% definitely wrong and damned to hell for rejecting the Quran for saying that? No, he's not rejecting the Quran. The question is, we as laity, I'm interested in who else has this opinion, right? So I look throughout history, like who else says I can eat pig fat, right? And you basically find nobody. So now we label that as fringe. So we say, can you follow that position? No. So it's a line between, it's not kufr to have that position, but you couldn't follow it. Does that make sense? So that's a qawl shadh, right? It's considered a fringe, weird opinion, right? For those of you who listen to my talk on meat, the playlist on halal food. I talk about fringe opinions. There's lots of fringe opinions. Yeah, I'm sure many people thought it was crazy. I'm sure. Other people have had the same idea. So, the fact many of the Salaf were criticized for having fringe opinions. So, in general, the Salaf they cancelled fringe opinions. Like when they noticed anybody had a fringe opinion, they just ignored it. Sayyidina Umar has fringe opinions. Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Abdullah Mas'ud, everybody. Everybody says something that everyone else at one time when everyone else says that's crazy. What are you talking about? Like Sayyidina Umar, he said that if you need to make, we spoke about this before, right? That if you need to make ghusl and you don't have any water, you just don't pray. You can't make tayammum. Like tayammum is only a replacement for wudu, not ghusl. So that's a fringe opinion. No, everybody just ignored it. Yeah, whatever. He said that and that's it. Whatever. People make mistakes. That's it. So the issue is people make mistakes, but societies don't make mistakes. The ummah doesn't make a mistake. So when you find, for example, the Hanafi school, they looked at something, they studied it, debated it, back and forward and backward, this, and they come to a conclusion, that's a solid answer. The Shafi'i school, the Maliki school. So we don't follow the position of afrad, of individuals. We follow the position of institutions. That's how we work as people who are heirs to a heritage, heirs to a civilization. Does that make sense? So otherwise, you're going to find like the most crazy opinions out there. Like you could basically make everything halal, probably, somehow. Does that make sense? So we're not interested so there are scholars today, right? There's a scholar today and you're like, wow, that guy's really amazing. He's nothing compared to Ibn Hazm. So the issue is not how amazing you are. The issue is how many people, where's the system, what happened after you, the system. Where is the system that came after you and supported you? It didn't exist. So therefore not interested, right? Just say Ibn Hazm said that. Inshallah he's right. But I'm not gonna promote that. I'm not gonna allow that. If somebody said, yeah, you can go ahead and do this, I'd say you're wrong. How do I know you're wrong? Well, no one else agreed with you. So there we go. Does that make sense? Okay, and it says, so another example. Who's heard the issue about pregnant women and breastfeeding women not fasting and not making qada? I'll answer your question in a second, Hafsa. You've heard of that discussion, right? So that you'll hear this every year that people will say, oh, if you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding, you don't have to fast and you don't have to do qada. You don't have to make it up. This exists. Okay, people will say this every they say, oh, so they'll quote who is it? Ishaq ibn Rahaway, right? He was like kind of the contemporary of Imam Ahmad, right? So it's a fringe opinion. It's a fringe opinion, right? It's like one or two people said it here and there. And no, I mean, what's the difference between somebody who's pregnant and somebody who's sick, right? Same thing, right? You're sick. You're sick. You're really badly sick for a year. Okay, don't fast and make it up, right? Same thing. So, sister, you got pregnant and then got pregnant again and then got pregnant again. Okay, make it up a year later, 2 years, whenever you have to make it up at some point, right? So the idea that you just don't do it at all, that's ajib, right? Apparently, Urwa ibn Zubayr, he said that you start fasting at sunrise. Okay, cool. Apparently, you know. Ibn Umar apparently said that if you touch your armpit, it breaks your wudu. Okay, because it's like touching your private parts, the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, it's a random position, right? You find lots of random positions. There was a Shafi scholar, he said that you could get a boulder from Arafah and put it in London, and then you can do your Arafah in London. So like you could do it as long as the piece of earth is there, it's fine. So are we? So the question is, are we looking at the piece of earth? Or are we talking about the geographical point, right? And so everyone says no, the geographical point, not the piece of earth, right? Like if you dug the Kaaba up, the Kaaba would still be in the same place, right? If the Kaaba got nuked, if you dug a big hole and just, the Kaaba is still the Kaaba. It's the geographical point, not something else, right? So, you know, but you know, so um, so things like this. So Hafsa asked the question: how do we go about judging an institution versus individual? How do we discern the line, scholarly consensus, and sticking with what is majority given that it is valid? So you look to see if it is. So you basically don't follow individuals. Simple as that. Don't take the fatwa of an individual, a modern or early. Look for a system, right? Like even right now, it's interesting. The Salafi movement is new, right? Salafi movement is a new movement. There was this book that came out, and it was kind of like a initial stage of editing the Salafi movement. And what did it do is it said he's put together the fatwas of Bin Baz, of Ibn Uthaymeen, and somebody else, a third scholar, I can't remember who it was. Albani, Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah. So three modern Salafi scholars, what their debates were, and like editing it up. So you can see that like what they've started to do is so the Salafi movement is a very primitive movement. So basically, we do not follow individuals. Okay, we do not follow individuals can make mistakes, but you have a system, right? You have a system. How many somebody suggests something? I'll give you an example. There was a modern sheikh, really really solid modern sheikh, Mustafa Zarqa. Mustafa Zarqa. Um, he was a Hanafi scholar, solid Hanafi scholar, well revered. And he made a point. He said like conventional insurance is totally halal. Like it's different, obviously, but it's just a different, valid, clear financial contract. It's totally fine. So then, he's not trying to come up with his own opinions. He's just trying to say, this is what the Hanafi school says. Like, I'm a Hanafi. This is the Hanafi school system. So now other scholars came along and said, well, let's look at your argument, right? Okay, give me 1 second, please. My apologies. So anyway, so he comes along, he's a solid scholar, revered. He suggests something, and scholars look at it and they accept, reject, and they're like, no, we don't accept it. So, and sometimes it takes time, right, for discussions, like istiqrar, for things to be like debated fully, and then it's like, no, this is what we're saying, right? So we don't put any individual on a pedestal, right? Individuals make mistakes. Systems are not wrong, right? When you have like a societal thing, like here's a whole school, this is their, they've looked at it from this point. It's like the amount of hours and the amount of checks and balances a person can make is limited, but the school cannot. So when you have like a school of thought and they've researched a discussion for a long time and it's mature, a mature debate, khalas, it's now valid, right? Yeah, so that's somewhat of a good question, right? So, for example, it was debated initially. There was like a conference in the Middle East, and people they agreed that you can in the West, given that the need, etc. And then others actually rejected that. So it's kind of I think the majority vote now is no, right? The majority vote now is no, but there's other positions as well, right? So it's not fully the debate isn't over yet, right? The debate isn't over yet, but wallahu a'lam. Um, inshallah. So the point is, you'll see a fatwa like this. The verse of the Quran says the only thing that is haram for you is the meat of a pig. So, well, linguistically, then you can assume that, anything if it's not the if it's not the meat of a pig, then it should be halal, right? Because it's not the meat of a pig. It's like, yeah, but most 99.999% of the ummah have researched this and said, yeah, I mean, that's just what we call kharaj makhraj al-ghalib. Like that's what you normally eat. I'm not going to say make sure you don't eat pig eyes because people don't usually eat pig eyes, do they? Right? And so, like when you say meat, you mean fat is included in it. Right? Allahu A'lam. Okay, and then it says, what is slaughtered in the name of other than Allah? So going back to the issue of insurance, and people disagreed, right? So he put together this theory, suggested it. People looked at it, like, no, you're wrong. We don't agree with you. So what is slaughtered in the name of other than Allah? So here, the Shafis, we say, if you slaughtered it in the name of other than Allah, meaning I'm going to say in the name of Lat, in the name of Uzza, or something like that, as opposed to you didn't say anything at all, right? That's fine in the Shafi school, right? And we have certain evidence from Hadith, etc., for that. The majority opinion is no. The majority opinion is you have to say Bismillah, right? You have to say in the name of Allah. Now, is it overlooked if you forgot, if something else? Does it apply to Jews and Christians? That's another discussion. But in general, the majority opinion is you have to say in the name of Allah, right? And then this is very important. And what has been strangled? So you said carrion is something that is not slaughtered. Okay, what does it mean to slaughter then? So it says, what if I ritually, the way I kill an animal, the chicken, is by strangling its neck? Like, does that count? What about beating it? What about chasing it off a cliff? What about if one animal killed another animal, right? One bull killed another bull. Can I eat the other bull, right? So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here is the only way that you can eat, right? The only way that you can eat meat is something that is cut, right? That the neck is cut. That's the point, right? Now, there are exceptions besides that, okay? So, but the point is electrocuted, beaten, shot, any of these things, this doesn't count. This is not considered. So now this, where would this, how would you categorize this? You would categorize this as carrion, right? If you shot an animal in the head, if you chased it off a cliff, if you beat it to death, etc. Again, unless it's fish, right? Fish, you can do whatever you want, right? You can electrocute fish, you can hit fish with a club, you could, just have it there, just die, one of the fish didn't die and it just died of, not being able to breathe, for example, it's still edible to eat, right? Obviously, you couldn't unnecessarily cause pain to an animal, but, you know. Um, how about an egg? I've heard elders say you must say Bismillah when cracking an egg. Is an egg alive? Right. So the elders have a lot of funny things, right? You know, like random things. And often the problem is often it makes life really, really difficult. So I remember there was this discussion with some Egyptian laborers that they, in their mind, if you pass wind, you have to wash your private parts. And if you don't, then you can't pray. So, um, and it's like really weird. It's like, I mean, you know, so a lot of times like deen becomes very, very hard because of like hearsay. Like that has Allah has no basis. Should you say Bismillah? Of course you should say Bismillah, right? Like, you know, like that's a huge ni'mah, right? Of Allah, right? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you this animal. Do you know where chickens are from, guys? Where are chickens from? Chickens come from eggs, Sister Fahmi. Yeah, I know, but where the chicken, the animals from, right? Chickens are from the rainforests of Malaysia and Indonesia. That's where they're from. It's called jungle fowl. So imagine this, like you are in Massachusetts, okay, and you're eating fried chicken. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had an animal evolve for millions of years in the jungles of Malaysia, Borneo, whatever, for some people to eventually domesticate them, and then for them to spread that across the world bit by bit, and for you bring them to the Americas, and for you to be able to have this in a cage and kill it with ease and eat protein with ease. You know? وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, we have honored the sons of Adam. وَحَمَلْنَاهُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. Right? We've carried him, the son of Adam, we've carried him on a on land and sea, made life so easy for him. So yeah, saying Bismillah, right? Saying Bismillah when you crack an egg, and like Subhanallah, think about the blessing, right? You have access to eggs, milk, cows, right? But in terms of halal and haram, no, it's not alive, is it? For the egg, we look cracking. Would we look at cracking the egg the way we abortion the soul? No, it's not, because it's not. Even if it was fertilized, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So even if it was fertilized, it doesn't matter. It's not alive. Okay, so gratitude is one thing, it being halal or haram is something else. Okay, so basically you have to slaughter the animal. What is partly eaten by a predator unless you slaughter it, and what is sacrificed at altars. Uh, you are also forbidden to draw lots for decisions, right? So they used to use divining arrows, spin the arrows, and say, should I do this or should I do that? All of this is evil. Today, the disbelievers have given up. So there was a question about machine slaughter, the same thing. So machine slaughtered is a bit problematic, right? So let's look at some of the issues with machine slaughtered. Number one, the issue of Bismillah, right? So, alhamdulillah, there is debate on whether you have to say Bismillah or not, right? So, ideally, we should always follow the majority opinion, which is you have to have somebody say Bismillah. But, okay, there's debate. Um, the big issue, in my opinion, the big issue with machine slaughtered, in my opinion, is who's killing the animal. You know? So, like right now, like I clicked record. Am I recording? I guess I'm recording, right? Like I clicked record, so I'm the one who's recording this live session, right? Um, I upload it onto YouTube, right? But am I like holding it in YouTube? So here's the thing: like I go in and press a button, the machine picks up 1 million chickens and slaughters 1 million chickens today. Like, am I the one who killed the chickens, or did the machine kill the chickens? Like that's a question. Like I don't know what the answer is. Right? What if I threw a knife into the air and it hit a tree and it bounced off the tree, hit the ground, bounced off the ground, and slit the neck of a cow. Like does that count as me killing the cow? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So it's for me, that's the biggest problem, is issue of agency. Who is actually doing this? So I don't really. So now, did he say Bismillah? Did he not say Bismillah? Okay. I mean, it's debated, but yeah, it was a Muslim or Jew or Christian. I'm saying it's a machine for crying out loud, right? It's a machine slaughtered. Like I didn't even do it. It's very different to like machine assisted. Let's say, for example, let's say power steering, right? Power steering, like I'm not steering the car. It's kind of like power steering. Okay, but as I turn right, turn left, that's what it's doing. So yeah, but Allahu Alam. Stunning is something else, right? So for example, with beef, right? So that's something else. So what can happen then with like chickens, because they're small, is you might stun them, and the stunning actually kills them. So they actually got electrocuted, which is problematic. But that usually with cows and sheep, that doesn't happen. So you might stun a cow or a sheep, but it won't die of it. Like it might get knocked out from the electric shock, but it won't die. Yeah. So that's less of an issue, Allahu Alam. Right? And the fact, and even the fact is like, well, how do I know that this chicken didn't die first? Well, you go by the default, right? So you don't have to be so nitpicky. But for me, the question is, here's a machine. Who actually killed the chicken? Me or the machine? You know? And I'm sure there's ways you could solve it. Like, what put my hand on the knife, So the machine just takes up, the machine like picks up 10,000 chickens, and in literally in like 2 hours, I can kill 10,000 chickens by me holding the knife in place. That'd be great. Why not? I'm sure there's ways around it, But Allahu A'lam. So as far as I know, if you gave me a machine shortest chicken, I'd be like, please don't be offended. I can't eat that, right? Allahu Alam. I don't think you can do machine slaughtered cows and sheep though. It doesn't really happen. But you can shoot. You might shoot a cow. You might stun a cow. They might cut it in the wrong way. That's possible, right? So with cows and sheep, but with chickens, something you only do with chickens. Wallahu alam. So for me, the issue is who is actually killing the animal. Okay. I just give. I mean, it's somewhat distant, but similar kind of discussion. You have an adhan app in your house, right? It's Dhuhr, it's Maghrib, whatever. This adhan goes for Dhuhr. Like, do you answer that adhan? No. Okay, why? Because nobody's calling the adhan. Like, that's not an adhan. So adhan is when somebody calls the adhan. That's just a recording of somebody calling the adhan. That's not adhan, right? You have Quran playing in your house, and it recites the surah of sajda. You don't do sajda because there's nobody who's saying anything. That's not considered. There's nobody reciting, you know. So nothing's actually happening. So this is a ritual. Killing is a ritual process done by a human, right? And this it's not done by a human. It's done by a machine. Wallahu a'lam. So I don't know. I can't give a final answer. As far as I know, it's not halal, right? Yeah, it's not an issue because. But so is it adab though? Not adab. You should turn it off. You know. But right, it's better to just like have Quran playing and listen to it. But technically speaking, nobody's reciting, right? That's not called qira'ah. That's not what we mean by qira'ah, because qira'ah is a ritual. A machine cannot do a ritual. Okay. And you also, okay, this is all evil. Today, the disbelievers have given up all hope of undermining your faith. So do not fear them, but fear me. So this is a general principle. Do not fear anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Should you be scared of your husband? Should you be scared of your wife? Should you be scared of your parents? Should you be scared of your teacher? Should you be scared of anybody? No. right? So whenever you have this feeling like I'm actually intimidated slash scared of somebody or something, you say astaghfirullah, and you make tawbah to Allah and say, oh Allah, please protect me from fearing anything other than you. So just like it's bad to like show off, like my whole things are going to show off to this person or show off to that person, right? That's wrong. Similarly, the opposite, right? I'm scared of that person, right? I'm intimidated by the person. It's not good. Right? That's not good, right? One of the Salaf, they were on jihad in Central Asia, and he was praying at night, and he was far away from the camp. They're like, they said, be careful. There's wild animals out there. And he said, I'll be too embarrassed to be fear, to scared, to stand before Allah and be scared of anything other than Allah, right? So obviously that's not, I mean, practically speaking, you shouldn't do that, but that was his attitude. Like, I mean, how could I stand in prayer and be scared of something else, Like Allah is the most scary of scary things, right? It's obligatory to fear Allah, and it's haram to fear anything other than Allah. Because it's a form of shirk, right? It's a spiritual shirk, and not shirk as in your creed, right? But it's a form of shirk, right? Just like showing off to other people in worship is a form of shirk, right? Says, today I've completed for you your faith and completed my favor upon you and chosen Islam as your way. But whoever is compelled by extreme hunger, not intending sin, right? Then surely Allah is forgiving and most merciful. So can you eat pork if you have no choice? Yes, you can, right? So then what's the argument? Oh, I live in America and there's no choice. There's no way I can eat unless I eat normal, non-halal food, right? Is that really true? It's not true. You don't need to eat meat. In fact, eating meat is a huge is a huge environmental problem, right? One of the main greenhouse gases is the methane produced by cows. That's a problem. It causes global warming, right? So actually, we eat too much meat, and it'd be better if people ate much less meat, right? It's not a normal natural thing to eat that much meat, right? Um, you can survive totally fine on fish or on other things. There's tons of people who do that, right? So it's the don't treat something that is not duress, right? Compulsion as compulsion. It's not compulsion, right? Oh, I have to go to a Christmas party because I live in America. Like, why? You know, it's not called compulsion, is it? I can't pray at work because there's non-Muslims here, right? So you're treating awkwardness as compulsion. It's not the same thing, right? We've discussed this multiple times. There's actual duress, and then there's haja al-multahaqa bil-darura, right? A difficulty that is treated as if it was duress, and then a difficulty that is not treated as duress. And then there's like, you know, negligible difficulty. So a lot of people treat negligible difficulty as if it was duress. It's not. You don't need to eat meat. You'll be totally fine. You'll be totally fine. Don't worry about it. Right? Most peoples of the world don't eat meat regularly because meat is difficult, right? Yes, there are certain peoples in the world, for example, like the Inuits, right? They live on like fat and, whale blubber and seal blubber and like, they eat raw meat and things like that. Fine. But most peoples of the world, that's not their food, right? Like, it's like on Eid al-Adha, we give meat as an extra, right? When you talk about the nafaqa wajiba, like what you have to support your wife and children with is grain. And why do they say that? Because that's the default. Like people eat grain. Like here's a bowl of rice. Here is a bowl of wheat. That's what we're talking about. Plus a little bit things to eat it with, right? But, you know, so like meat is not a necessary thing. Okay. And it says, they ask you, O Prophet, what is permissible to eat? They say, what is good and lawful? Um, and what is caught by your hunting animals and birds of prey, which you have trained as instructed. Now, this is something different now. So this is an example now of haja tanzil manzil darura. So we mentioned that there's sometimes when hardship will be treated as duress. So I'm hunting. How am I supposed to cut the neck of a deer that's running away from me? How am I going to do that? Like, it's actually very, very difficult. Or this rabbit that's like, or this hare. So I have a trained falcon and I use my falcon to get rabbits and I can eat it. So here the Sharia says the general need to hunt and the general widespread difficulty of actually slaughtering properly is overlooked. So there's a small harm in that you are hunting, and it's not just you're not eating carrion. You're hunting, you are killing this animal, but you're not really doing it the right way. So there's a small shift in the way that you're doing it, and but that's because of a need. So the Sharia treats that as that's a difficulty that's treated as duress. Technically speaking, you are not following the rules, right? But it's okay in this scenario because because it's a widespread difficulty, right, to actually do that. So when you're hunting, as long as you have a trained dog or a trained falcon or a trained whatever it is that you use, I think they sometimes use certain animals as well. You can't use a leopard, but they would use cheetahs. Yeah, you can hunt with a cheetah. You can train cheetahs. You can train other animals. Any animal that you train, right, and that actually obeys you, what you. So not just anything goes, right? But basically something that you can train like a dog, for example. And this, I don't know, anybody who's following me on Instagram, I posted something recently about dogs. And it's like, dogs are shaitan, dogs are najas, dogs are really bad. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran we can hunt with dogs, you know? Um, it kind of tells us that there's not really you know? So whether dogs are najas or not is one thing. It doesn't make them bad though, right? Like you can go hunting with a dog. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you have a guard dog, you have a work animal, a functioning animal, right? Sheepdog, a hunting dog is fine. Um, you I should get a kid dog to chase my kids, right? Parents, do you agree? Are we allowed to? How many parents do we have here? Are we allowed to get dogs in order to chase our kids? Is that a good idea? Yeah. Make sure they do their homework. No, it's not about survival. It's the general need for meat, so it's fine. So even if it was for fun, right? Like I have my fridge is packed full of chicken and ducks and whatever, and I just go hunting on the weekend. Yeah, it's fine. So yeah. So it's just the general need, the general society need for the whole of mankind means that for some people it's a pressing need, for some people it's just a luxury, but it applies it's considered as a duress overall, right? It's a bit like breaking your fast on journey or cleaning yourself and going to the bathroom. For some people, using water going to go to the bathroom would be really, really difficult, almost impossible. Other people would be kind of awkward. Other people, it's like, yeah, just lazy. I just don't want to use water. So it doesn't matter the fact that it's generally difficult for everybody in the world. So then everybody has the dispensation of just wiping and not washing. Breaking your fast on a journey, like literally, I'm in my private jet, and the day in Norway is a 6 hour fast. I'm in my private jet, and it's a 6 hour fast. It's super easy, and I woke up late. So I have so it's like it's not even a big deal, but I'm allowed to break my fast because of the journey. Why? Because of the general difficulty that applies to general people, right, when fasting and traveling. Does that make sense? Right? It's fine. It's totally fine. It's not an issue of recommendation. No. I think it's a good idea going hunting. It makes you appreciate food. Um, so basically, the animal that you can't control is a different picture there, right? Birds which you have trained, instructed. So eat what you catch for them, but mention the name of Allah over it first. Notice that? So this kind of flies in the face of the Shafis. The Shafis say, oh, it's only recommended to say Bismillah. So why does Allah mention it then? Why does Allah command us to do that? Right? So the Prophet ﷺ was asked, they said, Ya Rasulullah, sometimes I send my dog and another dog gets to pray first, or I'm not sure. So the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, you only said Bismillah for your dog, not for the other dog. So that doesn't count, right? Again, it's indicative, position of the majority scholars, that you have to say Bismillah, right? And be mindful, Allah, surely Allah is swift in reckoning. Today, all good, pure foods have been made lawful for you. Similarly, the people of the book, it is permissible for you, and yours are permissible for them. And permissible for you in marriage are chaste, believing women, as well as chaste women of those given the scripture before you. Right? So we're not going to go into all the details right now, but here's a question. It says, it's permissible for you in marriage are chaste, believing women. So can you marry a woman who's not chaste? Like she's not a decent woman. She's doing all sorts all the time. Like you marry this woman knowing that she's going to cheat on you. Like that's maybe may Allah protect us. She's a prostitute. May Allah protect us. Like could you marry a prostitute? So majority of scholars, yeah, that this is just that's just a general picture. It's not strictly you can't do that. The Hanbalis, they say no, right? They actually can't do that. And they have, and so the Hanbali, they actually mentioned something very interesting. They say like boyfriend and girlfriend, you couldn't get them married, right? So that will be a classic Imam job, right? It's like two people come in, they're like, Sheikh, this happened, da, 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 and they just make it halal. The issue of making halal is actually more complex for the Hanbalis, which is quite interesting. Like, is it a good idea for these two people to get married, given that they started off in a haram relationship? You know? Wallahu alam. They say a good way to know if your boyfriend or girlfriend is cheating on you is that you cheated on them. I mean, that you met them through cheating, went through by them cheating on their ex. So like this is the system is off. The way that these people work is off. So you need to like stop and start again. It's quite interesting. But anyway, majority of scholars, it's not a condition, right? It's not a condition. That being chaste, that's not a condition, right? As well as it, but it is, obviously a very, very bad thing to do, right? Why would they not allow that? What reason? Because we're going to see later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَحُرِمَ ذَلِكَ عَلى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said you can't, the believers cannot marry a zaniya, a woman who is not chaste. So there's a verse of the Quran to that effect. Yeah. Wallahu alam. Okay. But the majority opinion is yes, you could do that, right? Could a woman marry a man who's like he's not moral? Yeah, he's an alcoholic. He openly tells her, "I will cheat on you." Like, could you? Yeah, I mean, still, you could still technically marry him, right? I mean, okay, inshallah, I'll stop here. So it says, "Unpermissible for you in marriage are chaste believing women as well as chaste women of the scripture." So the ruh of the Sharia is completely different, though. The spirit of the Sharia is, here you are a Muslim, you've just moved to Argentina, there are Christian women there, you found a decent, respectable family of Christians, and now you're making ties between these Muslims and the Christians by marrying, right? As opposed to, whoops, look who I met at Vegas, and let's just make it halal. That's not the spirit of the deen. The spirit is not deen, is like, oh yeah, go ahead, It's like that's not the that's not the spirit. The spirit is that you're going to build connections for da'wah through marriage. That's what's going to happen. That people will be like, oh my God, we thought these Muslims are all crazy. Well, look at their kids, right? But otherwise, in many situations, it's a very, 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 very bad idea to do that, right? Inshallah, we'll talk about this. Inshallah, next week, inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم